Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History. Red versus Elvis. Phone Battle Royale. We are deep into a fight between two fierce combatants. It's a verbal battle, but they are both swinging at each other. One keeps kind of swinging low, and the other's not swinging as hard as he could be. But this is a crucible. This is the crucible of a warrior.
Born in the fire, Evansville flame, hammer in hand, carved out his name. 16 and airborne boots in the dirt, jumping through walls, on baptized and hurt. Karate in Japan, fists like steel, champion of honor, deadly and real. Sensei, a warrior's no room for doubt. You wear the G or you train and come back. Your eyes a crucible, baby, not a showbiz belt. You bleed, you break, you feel a warrior's spell. Elvis hit the mat, but he rose with a roll. Steer in his soul, ready for war. It's burning, burning, burning through the pain. Crucible of a warrior, forging Hank's domain. 30 throws, not dances, a fight. Bones to set, boards shattered on sight. Shoot oh elbow, fingertip flame. Every strike a prayer, every KO name. 6 weeks of fire, no cameras, no fame. Just sweat and bruises, no one played tame. Saw came in, fist like a storming set. Put him down, break ribs if it's known. It's a crucible, baby, not a velvet crown. You fall, you crawl, but you don't stay down. Elvis hit the mat, but he rose with the roar. Steer his soul, ready for war. It's burning, burning, burning through the pain. Crucible of a warrior, forged in Hank's domain. All eyes watched the king that day. Would he crumble or would he stay? But Hank saw it, war in his eyes. Not a quitter, but a fighter who rise. From Hollywood lights to dojo dust, Elvis earned it not on fame, but trust. No stunt, no script, just grit and bruise. Black belt truth, not a headline roots. A crucible, baby, not a stage or set. You earn every inch, every beat of sweat. Elvis hit the mat, but he rose with a roar. Steer in his soul, ready for war. It's burning, burning, burning through the pain. Crucible of a warrior. They burned through the fire, broke through the fear. The dojo legends and kings stood clear. Crucible of a warrior. Elvis was here.
Thank you for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today we've got yet more echoes directly from Red and Elvis. We're going to throw in at least one more person. And I bet a lot of you have wondered, as we get into these phone calls and we've learned about the racquetball courts that seem to be taking up a lot of the beginning of this phone call between Red and Elvis. A phone call that Elvis doesn't technically know is being recorded, in the sense that Red hasn't told him he's recording the phone call. Elvis is a very intelligent person, though, so I do believe he knows he's being recorded. Red used to be his number one guy, his first night. And Elvis is telling Red, the kingdom is under attack. Your paltry $50,000 deal is nothing. compared to what's being lost. The friends that you have left behind, not just me, they're being assaulted. The wolves have broken into the sheep and they're slaughtering everyone. The other sheep are running in fear. Red, we need you. Elvis doesn't say we need you, but he tells him about all the issues that normally Red would be up in arms about, and he would already be attacking the enemy. But in this case, Red's got his own battle to fight, and it's against Elvis. He's very, very angry at Elvis, and he's not going to give up this anger, even though Elvis began the phone call by absorbing all that Red threw at him. And he didn't throw anything back. But Red still won't let it go. Now, how did Red and Elvis originally meet? Maybe Red can tell us for himself.
But Red, what I want to get to, as at Humes High School, the story goes, and I want to hear it from you, exactly how it happened. You're up on the third floor bathroom at Humes High School.
Yeah.
Elvis is in there, and you pick up the story.
Well, you know, I know that we weren't close. It was a small school. We knew each other. Elvis was always different. As he made more progress later on in the music industry, he had to be different. Well, he was the same way in high school, but nobody knew who Elvis was then. You know, I just knew him casually, and I happened to walk in the bathroom one day, and you know the bullies. There's three guys two were holding him, and they were going to cut his hair.
Yeah.
Because we all had crew cuts, and his hair was back, you know, long.
Yeah.
And we're just going to cut his hair, and I happened to walk in. I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Oh, we're going to give him a haircut." I said, "Don't look like he wants the haircut." No, well, we're not going to hurt him.
Yeah.
I said, "No. If you cut his hair, you're going to cut my hair." And I had a crew cut, and I said, "I don't think you can do that." And they saw I was serious, and they backed off, and that was it. You know,
that was really the bonding of you and Elvis.
Yeah,
he never forgot that.
No, I know he didn't.
So that's Red telling us about how he met Elvis in the first place. They went to high school together. Red was a junior. Elvis was a senior in the year that the story takes place that they're telling about. We might also wonder if Red is a year behind. You know, Elvis, he graduated high school in 1953. He went on and recorded his first song, That's All Right Mama, July 1954. That would have been the year Red graduated. So Elvis recorded his first song roughly a month after Red graduated from high school. But basically that means there was a year in there where they didn't see each other much, because a guy that's out of high school probably isn't hanging out with a guy that is in high school very much. They just have two separate lives at this point. So how did Red first begin to work for Elvis? Well, let's let Red tell us for himself.
First of all, you were the first official bodyguard Elvis hired.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I was getting on, you know, I was a year behind. We were going to play Bartlett in a scrimmage game. Now I was getting on the bus. Elvis had, what, 2 records out, I think?
Yeah.
And he happened to drive up in that little old green, whatever that car was he was driving.
Green Lincoln, yeah.
I was just getting ready to get on the bus to go out to Bartlett. And he got out of the car, and I saw him, you know, and I was real proud. You know, I hadn't seen him since he had these records. Hey, man. And I walked.
I do want to point out that this is on a program called Memphis Sounds with GK. That's George Klein. So a lot of people ask, would Elvis have forgiven Red and Sonny and Dave? You know, Elvis was a very good person. And I think we might be able to argue that on this phone call itself, Elvis has already forgiven Red. But here, however many years later this is 2011 that they're doing this interview. George Klein, Elvis's friend, he has forgiven Red because he has him on this program. Now, I don't know, is that good? Is that bad? But here he is, 2011, and George Klein is hosting Red West on his program. And Red's telling us how he first started working for Elvis Presley.
Walked over, and we had a conversation, and he said, "How would you like to go with me on some of these one-liners around, you know?" And I said, "Hey, fine." So I started going, and you know, I stand backstage, and I see all this commotion going on. I said, "What's going on here?" You know, and that was it.
So there you go. That's how Red started working for Elvis. Give us a little backstory on how we got to this point where Elvis trusted Red so much that there's been this kind of rupture even possible. And what else is going on? Let's listen to a little bit of the phone call.
But you know, they kept kind of this wagon there, and then they got these builders, and they got themselves bound to a contract. 2 courts, they had for $500,000 each.
That's too expensive.
What the fuck, man? Poor Joe had his mother to hog her house, get a loan on her house, to get the money.
I can tell you about going into business with sharpies. They don't care if you hawk your mother's ass. You know, they don't.
I mean, that's what he had to do.
Would Joe get out of it?
Huh?
Is Joe out of it?
Yeah, he's in the process of trying to get out of it. You know, the builders, they were contracted to build the damn thing. The ones hold up the ball game because, well, I pulled out of it, you know. I had to. Because I saw it was a fine job, sneaky deal.
Well, I didn't know. You know, I didn't know if it was not. I just had a feeling it was.
Started off.
So we actually went over all of that part yesterday. That's just to catch us up to where we're at. And it's hard to hear. I do read it all. If you want to know what it says, you can catch that episode from yesterday. It's in the live stream section of the channel. But they're talking about this racquetball court business that Joe Esposito and Dr. Nick are involved in. And Joe Esposito has gotten his mother to take a mortgage on her house and invest that money into the racquetball courts. Elvis is saying there are 2 courts. We know there's one in Nashville and one in Memphis. They cost $500,000 a piece. And it's insanity. They shouldn't cost that much. He doesn't understand how they could cost that much. Somehow they were going to just use his name, but now he's on the line for the money. Again, Elvis is telling Red, the kingdom is under attack, Red. Somebody's got to do something. And Red is saying, well, I didn't know if it was a scam or not, but I kind of felt like it was. So he's indicating he's got that old protector instinct. He knows when something's a scam. He could have maybe helped, but at this moment, he's not really interested in it. And that's where we're really picking up today.
You know, I was Because I couldn't benefit nothing from it.
Right. It was just something to help them out. Nick, Nick didn't. I don't think Nick knew the guy that well. The guy was. No, he just.
So Elvis says it started out kind of innocent, I was told one thing, like I wouldn't have to put up a dime, wouldn't be no money, nothing. Well, that was the contract that I signed. So Elvis signed some kind of contract that didn't include any money. And yet now he's responsible for over $1 million. And then he says, I talked to Daddy about it just after he came home from the hospital. Elvis is telling Red that Vernon is sick. Don't you remember that my dad is sick? He was in the hospital. He couldn't watch these contracts. Nobody could protect the kingdom, Red. You weren't around. What happened? And then Elvis says, we talked it over for a long period of time. So whatever's happened here, it tricked Elvis and Vernon. They looked over the contracts. They read through them. They didn't see any danger in what they were about to do. No one told them there was a danger. No one more experienced, no one who could sniff out danger. And then Elvis says, if it would help Joe and Nick. So that's the reason that Elvis and Vernon looked over these contracts in the first place. This is a way we could help our friends, and it won't cost us any money. People are always after us for money, but here's a way we could do something without any money. And that's all they've asked for. And Elvis says they can use my name because I wouldn't benefit nothing from it. So it's important to Elvis that he helps his friends, but that he not get anything for it. He wants this to be pure help for Dr. Nick and Joe. And Red says, right, it was just something to help them out. So Red immediately understands that Elvis likes to help people. Red agrees, Elvis, you've helped a lot of people. This just fits that pattern. And Red says, Nick, who is Dr. Nick, I don't think that Nick knew that guy that well. So Dr. Nick has brought somebody into the mix. It's this Mike Mahan guy. That's the business boy. The one that's got the car that's paid for by the business. The one that's pulling a salary. And apparently he's come in through Dr. Nick. And Red is saying it's not Nick's fault. I know it's not Nick's fault because I know Nick. And Elvis says, I don't think he did either. So they both agree. Nick's a good guy. This is a shyster, and he's taking advantage of Nick. If we look at Elvis as a shepherd, Nick is one of the sheep. And this wolf has come in sheep's clothing. And he's gotten Nick, and he's gotten Joe. And he's darn near gotten Elvis. But they all agree they know who are the sheep and who aren't. They know who's part of the group and who's not. They know who's still loyal. They both agree Nick is loyal. Now, Red's agreeing, so I don't know how strong that is, but Elvis is extending loyalty back to Red, saying, I'm still loyal to you. You can still be loyal to me. Loyalty is about more than money. The money has nothing to do with it. Hi, Pat. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Red says, no, Nick just got sucked in. He saw a chance to make some money, hoping. That's Red describing himself. I saw a chance to make some money. I was hoping. That's part of what's going on in the writing of this book. Saw a chance to make some money. Was hoping it might make things better somehow. kind of open-ended, maybe better for himself, maybe better for Elvis. The hoping kind of indicates he knows it's not going to. It's about money. And that Nick has fallen prey to the same impulse, the same temptation. So is Joe. And Red even names it. He says, and Joe did too. But this other guy is the one I was leery of. So it's not the sheep who are tempted, the ones who are already in the group we have to be worried about, even though they are succumbing to the temptation. It's this other guy, the outsider, the external influence, this Mike guy with his car and his salary. He's the one. So they've both agreed and identified there is an enemy. There is a joint enemy. Something needs to be done about this. Someone's got to step up and protect the group. This is about more than Elvis. There's friends on the line here. Let's listen to more of this phone call.
Got sucked in. He saw a chance to make some money, hoping, and Joe did too. But this other guy, the one I was leery of.
Oh, that's good. I talked to my attorneys yesterday about it.
I swear that in the background I can hear somebody dialing a phone.
You know, Mr. Davis.
It has a very distinctive sound because it's a rotary phone. Now, some of you may not remember back in the days before touch tone, and you may even be saying, touch what? So back in the day, before we had cell phones, and before we had screens on the cell phones, there were buttons that had the numbers on them. They called them a keypad. And before they were a keypad, they were on just a phone. And it was like on your desk or on your wall. It had a wire. It connected into the wall. You could only move it as far as the wire allowed. Some were fixed in place. They were similar to the payphones that were everywhere. And there was a keypad on them, and it was called a touch tone keypad because when you press the buttons, it makes a tone. Each key is different, and that's what tells the machinery in the background what number you're calling. But before that, there was a big dial with holes in it for each number, and you put your finger in the hole you wanted, and you twisted the whole dial around. It's kind of like winding it up, and then it clicked back through, and however many clicks it made, that was the number that got transmitted over the lines, and that's how they figured out what phone number you were calling. And you can hear that machinery in the background very faintly in this call. So I think there's somebody else in the room using a rotary phone to make a phone call. I'm going to back up just slightly. You can listen.
I talked to my attorneys yesterday about it. You know, Mr. Davis died.
Yeah, I know. I saw that in the paper just before I left.
And the guy was taking his place. Just he started talking all this money stuff. And then he said he's lived something.
Now, I'm sure everybody heard that dial tone that just came up. That cannot be on Elvis's end. There's no way that's coming from Elvis's end. Hi, Luann. Thank you so much for coming. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for coming. And Luann saying, we had cable phones with dial numbers, and us kids weren't allowed to use it, but we did. Yeah, we did too. And we had rotary at first when I was a kid, and then we got our first touch tone. I remember it was a big deal. And let's see here. Let me figure out where we're at in the text because I just want to read this out. Uh, Red says that the other guy's the one he was leery of, and Elvis says, "Oh, that son of a gun," or something like that. You can't quite really hear it, but I think he curses him out, and then he says, "I talked to my attorneys today about that racquetball. You know, Mr. Davis died." Now, I don't know who Mr. Davis is. You might think like Richard Davis, but it's not him. So I don't know who Mr. Davis is. But Red says, "Yeah, I know. I saw it in the paper just before I left." Now, Davis must be connected with this deal because Elvis says the guy who is taking his place, he just said that he started talking about this tarot card stuff. Now, is this really what he said, this tarot card stuff? I'm not sure. It's kind of really hard to hear the recording at that part. But Elvis says, and you know what he said? He said, "Elvis, it's time." Well, you see, what started happening is he would try to hit me up for $10,000 or $20,000. So some guy is in the business and he dies. And another guy takes his place, and this guy starts telling Elvis things like, "I'm seeing in these tarot cards that we've really got to get this business up and running. And to do that, we need $10,000. Oh, we need another $20,000, Elvis." So he's come back a few times for money. This has begun to worry Elvis. And Red says he started hitting you up for it. Oh, yeah, well, there is a pattern then. And Elvis says, "So I thought, well, are you guys putting up that kind of money?" So there's partners in this business. Elvis has only got a quarter of it. And he's thinking, if I put up $10,000, $30,000 more dollars gets put up, and there's $40,000. If I put up 20, there's really $80,000 because the partners are investing. But after he invests a few times, he thinks, wait a minute, normal people can't do this. Are you guys investing your part of the money? So he asked this guy who's replaced Davis. And he says, he goes, "Yeah, so-and-so, my lawyer knows." So he gives Elvis some runaround answer. And Elvis recognizes it as a runaround answer. And Red says, "Yeah, I remember he was on one of the tours with us." So Red knows whoever this is that they're talking about. Let's listen to some more.
Well, see, what started happening would be and they'd start hitting me up. Right now.
Start hitting you up for it? Oh, yeah. Well, there's a pattern.
And when Red jumps in and says, "Oh, yeah, well, there is a pattern," that's old Protector Red. Elvis has activated Red's instinct. "Red, I'm under attack. Here's what's been done." "Oh, there's a pattern here, Elvis. I see it immediately." That indicates Red might even know what to do.
That's putting up that kind of money, you know. Yeah. Yeah, so right. Larry,
Yeah. Yeah, I remember he was on one of the tours with us.
on the tour, pretending to be interested in the numerology books and stuff, you know, and all falls in place.
Yeah.
But we're smart enough to do that. All right. Then, it amounted to they needed $80,000. I said, "Okay, for what?" "For a secretary."
God damn. Boy, I did them secretaries. They got a union there or something.
That's exactly what I said.
So Red says that he remembers this guy who was on one of the tours with us, and Elvis says on the tour, pretending to be interested in numerology books and stuff. So Elvis marks this person as a fake spiritualist, someone who has pretended to have a spiritual interest in order to become closer to Elvis. Now, if you're following my spiritual series that I'm doing opposite of this one, then you'll know that there's not very many people that Elvis can talk to about spiritual stuff. Most people aren't interested. This man has seen an opening, but Elvis has marked him as a pretender. Now, when did Elvis come to this knowledge he was a pretender? I'm not sure. But he says, and it all falls in place. So there was some point where Elvis looked back and said, oh, this was a fake interest the whole time. And then Elvis says, but he was smart enough to do that, all right? And so when Elvis looked back and he saw that this man had faked this interest, he saw that there was a plot, that this took brains, that there had been a conspiracy, maybe of one person, but somebody had planned this and they thought through it with intelligence. And now this man's inserted himself into the group. And then Elvis says, then it amounted to what they needed, $80,000. So Elvis has been asked for $10,000, for $20,000, and now for $80,000. So we're up to $110,000 now, which is very similar to a number that we heard a fan quote as the extra amount of money they're asking Elvis for. Well, here it is right here. And Elvis said, okay, for what? What do you need this $80,000 for? And they say, for a secretary. And David's asking, how was the tape machine connected to the phone? Well, my guess is it's just a tape recorder. You know, one of those kind from the 70s that was kind of rectangular. And usually you could pull out a handle on it. My dad had one, and I used to play with it a lot. They would come, well, you could purchase a microphone that you could plug into it, and then you'd be able to hold this microphone up to the phone. But it's going to catch stuff from all around. Now, Steve Dunleavy might have had a slightly more advanced piece of equipment, but there wasn't any digital equipment back then, so whatever he had basically covered the earpiece and recorded, but it's going to pick up extraneous sound. That's how we're hearing all these other sounds that are in their room. And I would also say that what Pat is saying in the chat, Pat is a very wise person. And I would pay attention to what she's saying in the chat. Now, once they get to this secretary thing, Red says, whoa, secretary for $80,000. They got union dues or something. So Red seems very familiar with what a secretary should make. Well, he should, because his wife was a secretary when he married her. Now, that was more than 15 years previously. It was in 1961. And this is 1976. But he does know how much she made then, and she worked directly for Elvis. So he kind of has an idea what a secretary should make. Now, does Elvis? Well, of course he does. He's employed many, many secretaries. So I'm sure that Elvis does know what he pays people. He may not be able to tell you to the penny, but he's got a pretty good idea what people are making that work for him. And he knows he's paying better than everybody else. So $80,000 in 1976, that's like $750,000 plus today. Do you think anybody would hire me as a secretary for $750,000 today? Because I might be willing to take that job. If any of you have that job available, well, let me know in the comments or in the chat. But it's a lot of money, and Elvis is a rich man, but he does have some idea of what the value of money is. He's not completely forgotten it. And if he has, Vernon's there to remind him. And so Elvis says, that is exactly what I said. Elvis is saying, this 80,000, this is insanity. And Elvis says, but how is a secretary going to cost 80,000? Elvis is saying, we're going to pay the secretary like my kind of money for a day. Like, what are we talking about here? And Red says, no, it's time to get the heck out of that. So Red's saying he recognizes this is a terrible deal. There are a lot of signs of it. There's red flags. He could have maybe done something. Doesn't come out and say could have, but he's indicating he sees everything that Elvis is seeing. They're on the same page with this. And Elizabeth says she'd love to have that secretary job too. Yeah. For a racquetball court thing. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And that makes you wonder if she's getting paid $80,000, the secretary, how much is Mike, the guy who's pulling the salary, getting paid? How much are they paying that designer guy that made the business cards and stuff? And then Elvis says, I tried to hang in there with them, you know. I didn't want to crush their enthusiasm, their dreams, or whatever, you know. So Elvis indicates he was thinking of his friends and their emotional lives in that moment. I think he might have been thinking more about their financial lives because Joe's got his mom involved in this thing. She's got her house mortgaged. There's a lot more on the line here than emotions, but Elvis wants to highlight the emotions for Red. Red, I'm thinking of their emotions. I thought of yours as well. I'm here to tell you I've been thinking about them, and I'm ready to work this out. Now, let's take a moment to ask ourselves, what did the guys, Red, Sonny, and Dave, actually think about Elvis, especially in this 1976 period? And Marion says, I don't understand why they would have needed that money in one portion. Wouldn't they pay the secretary monthly or even weekly? Whoa, I don't know. I could take the secretary job and they're going to pay me the whole annual salary up front. This thing just keeps getting better and better. I am ready to sign up for this job. So, yes, Marion, I would say this is total lunacy, and people really do think Elvis is stupid. These people think Elvis is stupid. But we might notice that in financial matters, Dr. Nick and perhaps Joe Esposito are stupid. Like, I don't want to make any judgments about them. I'm not making fun of them, but they have made at least an $80,000 error here, but one that's really $1.3 million and truly perhaps $5 million. These two gentlemen have really messed up. I have never made a $5 million error. I've never even made an $80,000 error. If we add up all my errors in my lifetime, I may exceed 80,000, but all at one moment. I mean, this is the scale of this is out of control. And I see that we've got going on in the chat that there is a gentleman that has another Elvis channel. Louis McCready, who has Defending Elvis. And there are volatile moments on his program, and he, he really cares about what he's doing. And it creates a lot of emotional tension at times. And everybody can make a mistake. And I'm not saying that Louis made any mistakes. But I have found Louis to be a person that you can work things out with. He is a good person. He's trying. So give him a chance, because I think we've all made some mistakes in our lives, and even on this platform in our YouTube lives. Now, let's switch over for a moment to look and see, what do these three gentlemen truly think about Elvis?
People that are out there looking on think they know what you can do or what you should have done. And some of them are right in what they think, but getting it done is the problem when you're in denial. When you're that powerful of a personality that you're so used, you've been a millionaire since you were 20 years old, 21 years old. 2 years earlier, you didn't have a dime. You were searching unemployment before you had your first record out. He started doing appearances through the southern states region. And then Colonel said, you got $1 million worth of talent, you'll be a millionaire. And he made him one before he was 21. So things kind of came easy to him. We made phone calls for him. He'd just say, call Daddy, get Daddy on the line. We'd call Dial and hand it to him, and he'd give it back to us when he was done. We'd hang it up.
So that's what Sonny says, that Elvis had it easy. That's the way that Sonny sees it. Now, Sonny wasn't there for those first years that Elvis worked, and I'm here to tell you that those years were very, very hard. That Red would agree that those years were extremely hard. They were difficult on their bodies, they were difficult on their minds, they were difficult on their performances. It was hard work. And they had to personally drag all of their equipment from spot to spot. They didn't have a lot of equipment, but it was heavy, and they had to take it. Elvis had to restring countless guitars because he had this habit of breaking the strings all the time. And that's a big issue if you've got to have that guitar ready 2 or 3 times a day. You know, Elvis, they never had any money in their pockets because Sam Phillips couldn't keep Elvis paid. So they were depending on the money they were going to make at each show to make it to the next show. And some of that money had to dribble over to feed Red and to put gas into the tank. So Sonny doesn't really know anything about those years. What Sonny knows is the time he was there after everything was running fairly smoothly. And he says all Elvis did was tell us to make a call. And then it's Sonny who actually made the call. And he said something to Vernon. So from Sonny's perspective, Elvis didn't do anything. And Vernon didn't do anything. The person who did something was Sonny. He made the call. That's where the work is. Without Sonny, where would everybody be? It's Sonny that actually does the nitty gritty. He dials the phone, or he tells the operator where to call. He finds the person on the other end, and he delivers the message. Now, what Sonny's missing is the message is important, and somebody had to decide something that's being done. That's Elvis. He's issuing orders. And Vernon is actually doing the work on the other end. There is work being done. And if Vernon doesn't do what he does, then Sonny doesn't get paid. But in Sonny's estimation, when he tells the story, Elvis has it easy. He's had everything he ever wanted since he was 21. He doesn't really know what it is to be a working man. And the extent of his work is he tells somebody to make a phone call. that is Sonny's and Red's and Dave's view of Elvis in 1976. And Sonny is repeating it in 2010. It's still with him. That is the way these three gentlemen were looking at Elvis. And that is straight from Sonny's mouth. I didn't make any of that up. I'm not saying Sonny said something he didn't say. We all saw it together. Sonny does not credit Elvis for what he truly was doing. Now, let's hear from Larry Geller for a second. Larry says that about the firing, that Red took it especially hard, even though he and Elvis had not been close in years. Red's anger wasn't about money or even the job, I think. He was hurt. That fall, so Larry's saying that fall or that autumn, several people close to Elvis got phone calls from Red, Sonny, or Dave. Now, when is fall or autumn? That's basically October. I can't prove this for sure, but it appears that these gentlemen made it into the hotel in October, that's autumn, and they began to call everybody they knew that was connected to Elvis in order to, number one, get information and quotes and things like that. Steve Dunleavy needs that stuff to write this book and these articles. But also to notify Elvis they're here and here's a phone number you can reach us at, because they're going to be giving this phone number to all these people that they talk to. Again, I can't prove any of that. That's not written anywhere. But Larry's saying people are receiving phone calls. Phone calls are not free back in that day. You know, we could pick up our cell phone, we call all over the world, basically. Or we could figure out a way to do it through the internet. We could basically call anywhere we want for free in some way. Back then, it was long distance. It cost money. We have three gentlemen that are saying they have no money and they're not going to put out any money to make any money. They are not investors. That's not what they do. So they're not calling anybody on their own and putting any money into it. They're using phones that are going to be billed to Steve Dunleavy, the Star, and Rupert Murdoch. That's why Larry's noticing there's all of these phone calls. Again, I'm speculating on that part, but that's how it was back in those days. Somebody had to pay for those phone calls. So Larry says that fall, several people close to Elvis got phone calls from Red, Sonny, or Dave, asking them about dates and details. They said, writing a book about Elvis. So they weren't hiding this. They were very brazen. They started calling people all around Elvis and saying, hey, we're writing a book. Here's a phone number where we're at. What do you know that's salacious that you can tell us? I think we could also surmise Larry himself got a call. He may not have, because he says several people close to Elvis. Now, he writes another sentence that I don't have here shortly after that does kind of imply he got a phone call. And we've got to ask ourselves, who in the group would tell Larry they got a phone call from Red? Larry's not really close with the people that Red would call in most cases. So I don't know. I don't know if Larry got one or not. Larry says that the people that were close to Elvis, the part that I don't have the exact quote, is that they didn't speak to, they didn't tell anything to Red, Sonny, or Dave, but they did tell Elvis. So again, I think that might have been Larry. Speculation, though, speculation. However, who did Sonny talk to? Well, let's hear from Sonny himself.
Jumped on board. Where were they when he needed them? I mean, you know, he's all these that said, if I could go to Tom Jones. I went to Tom Jones. When Red and I were fired, I went over, he was making a movie at MGM. I said, Tom, please talk to Elvis. He's out of control. He's out of control. He said, what is it? I said, he's taking too much medicine, you know. And he said, oh, Sonny, that's not good. I call it. Well, I didn't know whether he did or not until I saw an interview here just a couple of years ago where he was sitting doing an interview, and he did say that I used to call Elvis, and he'd, call me back. We'd talk. But he said it wasn't that often. We were very busy. But he said, someone spoke to me. He didn't mention my name. Someone spoke to me about that last year or so, and so I tried to call him, but he never called me back. So I give him credit for that. But
So there you go. Sonny went to Tom Jones. Of course, he didn't have to call him long distance. He just went over there in person, and he was talking to Tom. And he says he told Tom Elvis is on drugs. Now, Marion says that Elvis always worked hard, and how dare of Sonny to say that Elvis had it easy, basically, that he wasn't really doing anything. And Luann's saying that I was a teenager when phone dials were around. Yeah, I was even actually younger than that. The touch tone was a thing from about when I was 10 years old. Well, that's when we got touch tone. It was earlier than that, but we were behind the times because we were on the poor side. And Pat says what I'm understanding is that Tom Parker was trying to get rid of a lot of the Memphis Mafia guys, saying they were bad for Elvis. Well, I think Colonel Parker, he knew which guys were telling stories around Elvis. Parker had as good an intelligence network around him as Elvis did. They both had their own intelligence thing going on. People reporting back to them about things. But because their circles are constantly colliding, they know things about each other's circle. And one of the kind of hidden things in the history of Elvis and the Colonel is they shared those things with each other. They were friends. They were in it together. They were united, perhaps not in front of everybody, but there was a triumvirate, and it was Elvis, Colonel, and Vernon. These three gentlemen knew more about everything going on than anybody else, and they had private conversations that no one knows what was said. And Marion says that sounds very possible to her, that they complained about having no money, but making expensive long-distance phone calls. No way they could have done that. Absolutely. Somebody has to pay for these things. And if they didn't know for sure they were going to make the money from the book, then they wouldn't have done it. And they're not going to call in advance because the guy with the account, the business account, is about to show up and they'll be able to use the phones for free. And Pat says that they had a party line when she was growing up. Okay, that's going back even a little farther. For people who don't know what that is, you would just pick up the phone, which was wired into your wall and connected to a wire on a telephone pole, and it ran along between all the houses. But instead of everybody having a separate phone number, that line was live all the time. And whoever picked up their extension at their house, well, they could hear whatever was going on the line. Now, there were a few different lines. They let like 3 or 4 or 5 lines in there. So you wouldn't necessarily all end up, it depends on what wire went to your house, at least in some of the more advanced party line systems. But like if you lived in a little town, everybody was on the same line. Like they didn't even have a second strand. So you could pick it up and you could hear whatever your neighbors were talking about. And that was very entertaining back in the day. And there were people that they just spent their day listening to what else was going on the phone. And then when other people would pick up and they weren't sure where the conversation was, there'd be somebody that knew and they just start telling them, well, here's where we're at in today's conversation. It's like a town-wide conversation. So that is a very interesting thought. I did not ever experience a party line. Well, that's going to bring us to the end of our episode for today. We've still got so much more of this phone call to go through, but think how much we've learned. Turns out everything we need to know about this racquetball deal, Elvis is telling us in his own words, with his own voice, right in this phone call. And that's where all these other people who've ever written about it, that's where they're getting most of this information. But I'm going to let everybody go with a song for today. And this song is I Was There. And until I see you all again, you all keep on taking care of business. And thank you so much for being here today.
Midnight lights, rhinestone fire, Arabian suit burning with desire. He hit the stage like thunder rolls, Vegas shook and the story unfolds. Charlie's birthday crowd went wild. He cracked a joke then sang with style. But just before he sang Hurt So Weak, he stopped the show and made us weep. He gave away his heart, not just a song. Diamonds and gold where the love belonged. Rings and shades from the man backstage. He healed the broken, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I saw it all that night. Back in hand, the man stepped near. Elvis smiled, the crowd could hear. Thanks to you, we raised the light. 17,000 hearts took flight. Then back behind the velvet door, he gave away a little more. A music ring, a boxcar shine, a suit that held a sacred time. He gave away his heart, not just a song. Diamonds and gold where the love belongs. Rings and shades from the man backstage. He healed the broken, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I saw it all that night. Didn't need applause to know his worth. He gave away his soul in Vegas mirth. Not just a king, but something more. A man who knew what hearts were for. He gave away his heart, not just a song. Pieces of love where the brave belong. Ritual gifts from the man backstage. He saved the hurting, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I'll never be the same. I was there, I saw the rings, I saw the light. He gave away his heart, and it burned so bright.